Super excited to talk about this topic of fast and how it is super powerful in terms of an advertising medium, how we got advertisers and agencies leaned in. I think, Pete, to start off, let's tell everyone with what fast even means. Our industry loves acronyms, so let's dive into what fast means to the consumer. And when they're watching fast content, what does that mean?
Great. Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. To me, fast means free TV. So really, the platforms that are embedded in all these devices that the modern consumers, these streamers, are consuming content on. And there's really two distinctions. There are the paid platforms and there are the platforms that are free. And so Fast really focuses in on those free platforms. And it's really a sleeping giant. It's a growing medium that is growing faster than, pun intended, faster than any of the other ones. 45% year over year growth. You've got major events that are now being shown on Fast, last year's Super Bowl, plenty of other live sporting events. And I think what I love about Fast is that it's one other component to add to the mix. And when I think about the modern shopper or the modern consumer of media, just like online, when you put the name of a business into your search bar and it pops up in four different places, the marketers need to be where those shoppers are. And the good ones have done a really great job over the years to make sure that you pop up in paid search, that you pop up in organic, and also that you pop up in Google My Business. So if we think of the ecosystem that is online video and digital video and OTT and all again these acronyms and these destinations that our consumers find. Think of Fast that way, that Fast is one of those places where marketers need to be because those eyeballs and those ears are there.
Makes total sense. And I think, Pete, it's always a smart way to frame recommendations, where should an advertiser or an agency deploy dollars? It's always super critical to frame that from the lens of where consumers are spending their time. And I had a couple good thoughts too as you were saying all that. Free is the key word there. FAST stands for free ad-supported streaming television. And free is a key word there because I think it means a couple things. It means accessibility. So anyone can sign up for any of these free TV apps and stream. And just to fire off a couple household names so everyone's familiar, Roku, who's a great full throttle partner, Pluto, Tubi, Samsung, Vizio has a free TV channel, Google. So to your point, Pete, these free TV apps are built into hardware that consumers buy. And consumers are burned out. They're paying for so much stuff these days, and I think the Hulus and all the paid streaming services are great, and powerful ad experiences as well. But in terms of consumer reach, free TV and fast is really taking off because it's accessible and it's free. And people are burned out from paying for every single subscription out there. They're very comfortable with an ad-supported environment. So they get all those benefits of the paid streaming services in terms of big screen, premium content, good ad experience, but they have it all for free, and it's a lot frictionless to get started and sign up with free TV. So we see huge scale. And I had a stat here. I believe Tubi um, now has over 100 million monthly active users. So to your point, fast has gone mainstream. And I think it's really if you look at all the fast out there and add it up, it's an absolutely gargantuan place where consumers are spending their time and attention.
So I read recently that Tubi has just surpassed 100 million monthly users. And to me, that really goes back to meet these shoppers where they are. They're there. There's 100 million users or households that are already in this medium. And I think the market is primed for a big shift in the way that we look at audiences. And rather than choosing a specific platform, sure, there's certain things where you can only reach the Amazon Prime audience through the Amazon Display Network. But there are plenty of other things that are out there that are easily findable, that are out there on the open exchange. And so it's really more about concentrating on the audience and finding them where they are. So if you're not going to turn on the switch that is fast, it's just like saying, I'm not going to turn on Google My Business, because when someone puts that name into the search bar, they're going to have three options right off the bat. So if you are trying to target someone's eyeballs and ears, their heart and their minds, to influence them while they're sitting watching their big screen, then you better make sure that you're everywhere where they are going to end up.
Love that analogy. I think if it is, you're right. It's probably just as devastating if you're not on fast networks, just as if you're not on Google My Business. It's really a no-brainer. And if consumers are spending that much time with this type of content, you're missing a critical opportunity to speak to your audience. And you had a couple of good words, um, that you've used, Pete, too. I think we talk a lot in the CTV world about the opportunity to build trust. And I think premium video is one of the best environments you can take advantage of to build trust. It's a full TV, high res commercial spot delivered on the big screen. To your point, probably have your, maybe a couple other stakeholders and family members on the couch watching,
Great
that
point.
content too.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to think about, is that that premium trust building experience is generally shared. And I think that there's some good stats out there. I've seen as much as almost 80% of the content that's on connected TV and free TV or OTT is co-viewed.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a big one. So I think to your point, Tubi is not Tubi, Pluto, Roku, they're not simply niche, anymore. And it's not only the whole family, it's the whole country, really that's streaming. This is we're just brainstorming here, but we can be like, Roku, Fox, who owns Tubi, is a great full throttle partners. There's kind of a perception out there that the fast content is all older and niche shows, which are still valuable and great. Is that still accurate now, or has that world kind of evolved a bit where now there is significantly more things to stream?
One of the things I love about free TV, Lou, is just the openness that it's providing to the creator community. And we all know that the younger generation is consuming a ton of content through YouTube, through the social channels, from these individuals that are generating huge audiences that are now valid. And what's exciting to see is them transitioning, call it, to the mainstream via free TV, that they're out there, and those audiences are ones that the younger generations are going to recognize. But if we think about just those generations, we won't be talking about some of the other content that we see on Tubi or on other free TV options. And that's all of these tried and true shows, call them a renaissance opportunity for these previously worldwide syndicated shows that may have landed on some of the paid platforms and ran their course, but they still hold equity and they still hold the attention of viewers. Those are also being housed in that same environment. And I think it's really important to recognize that about 5 hours per day is being consumed by households through TV or video or online or OTT content, right? All these different, call them swim lanes, that fall under the same umbrella, which is the big screen, sight, and sound. And again, think about how you would compare that to how you would look at an audience through search. When you put that name up into the search bar, there's 4 or 5 options. Turning your back on one of those options would be a death sentence to any online marketer. That's what's happening right now. And that's really the opportunity that exists on these other mediums, especially fast, because it's new, people are unsure, and it really reminds me of some of those new mediums that popped up under the search bar when you put that business in.
The content available through FAST has expanded massively. And it started off as older TV shows and things, to your point, that had already syndicated. I'm a big Hell's Kitchen fan, and I used to watch that, on a FAST network. But now it's expanded to original content. It's expanded to movies and live news. It's expanded to the Super Bowl, to your point. And then now it's even expanded to the creator economy. So some of that audience, to your point, that previously spent a lot of time on YouTube may now be spending a lot of time and increased, levels of time to come on the fast networks. So in terms of reach, The eyeballs are there, the consumers are there, people are spending time there. And to your point as well, it's about thinking about the audience-based opportunity and understanding that if you have a specific audience you want to reach them on all devices, you want to reach them where they're lean back and engaged, and you're not on fast, you're about to be missing a critical piece of the marketing mix. And there's going to be a gap in their customer journey where you're not speaking to them, but maybe a competitor is.
Lou, let's think of the modern consumer and all the options that they have to view and consume content and why it's important for, of course, for marketers to keep score of things. We all want to know what worked and what didn't. And in programmatic digital, it's become very easy for some to kind of see that whole entire journey, find out what's influencing, what's working, and what isn't. And I think one of the hesitations that people have with getting into the streaming world is being able to quantify the impact. And I think one of the pitfalls there is that folks are starting with the platform first instead of the audience first. And it's really important to understand the difference between reaching the people that count and counting the people that you reach. And the notion of the yellow brick road for attribution, where marketers will often choose what's the easiest to quantify so that they can keep score and preserve their own existence instead of taking a completely different approach, starting with something that you can still quantify, which is the audience, something that you can reach and that you can recognize, and then going where that audience is. And instead of saying, I want to find them on a specific platform, say, I'm going to make sure that I'm everywhere where that audience is. I'm not going to try and push them down what I like to call the yellow brick road for attribution, somewhere where we can keep score, where we can point our fingers back at ourselves to say that we made an impact while also knowing that really all we did is had a slight amount of influence on that shopper. So change the script, target the audience, meet them where they are, and match back that audience to a simple goal. That's what Full Throttle AI can do. And that's why it's exciting to have other menu options that always start with the audience and end with the audience. What happens in the middle can oftentimes be not as significant if we don't know what happened at the beginning and at the end. All right, so think of an automotive dealer, for example. We all know they have to spend a ton of money on advertising. We all know that they have about 1,000 different options and different companies packaging those different options in a let's just call it way too many ways. And what does that create? It creates oftentimes paralysis by analysis. It also creates the environment of I'm going to test everywhere and really not being scientific about what's working and what isn't. And so, what we often tell our automotive partners is again, start with your audience first. Don't think about where you want to reach them, think about who you want to reach. And if we start there, then think about, I guess, an automotive dealer and high funnel awareness tactics, right? They know that they have to be, say, on the big screen. In the past, it might have been on linear TV or through cable. Now, as that ecosystem has changed, they know that they have to take a certain portion of that budget and devote it to new mediums, right? And that can be an unknown world. But if you're starting with an audience that you already know is engaged because you've earned the opportunity to be in front of them, because you literally harvested that audience from your own website, that's a great place to start. To dip your toes into that world through an audience that you know is already engaged, through an audience that you know is already saying, I want more. That'll take a lot of the wonder out of whether or not we're reaching the right people in that new medium, whether it's an unknown or known. All right, think about this. If you're an automotive dealer, you know you have to be out there in that OTT space, in that streaming video space, whatever acronym we want to use today, and there'll probably be a new one tomorrow. But think about how you want to be out there. Start with your own audience. You know that you have a certain amount of households or people or engagement that you've earned on your site. The question then becomes, how do you deploy media against that audience? And how do you do it in a way where you know at the end of that journey that you can determine whether or not that audience did anything. And that's really easy if you're talking about 123 Main Street, because we know if we see 123 Main Street on the site and we deploy media to 123 Main Street, and then 123 Main Street buys, that information is going to be fed back into the system. Without 123 Main Street, all you're doing is throwing the same darts that everybody is throwing at those third-party audiences that are in your area. That's not to say that we're saying turn your back on those audiences. In fact, we have them in the Full Throttle AI platform, but your foundation should always be your foundation, your audience first, everyone else's audience second.